The midday light poured through the skylight of Heart Dynamics' main lobby, casting geometric shadows across polished marble floors. Evan Brooks, a man in his early 30s wearing a Navy janitor's uniform, knelt beside a coffee spill near the elevator bank. He worked methodically, his mop tracing slow circles across the stone. The lobby hummed with the quiet efficiency of a Tuesday afternoon, executives crossing toward glass-walled conference rooms, the distant ping of arriving elevators, the rustle of tailored suits against leather briefcases. Then Olivia Hart stepped out of the executive elevator. She paused, scanning the lobby with the practiced assessment of someone who owned every square foot of it. Her gaze landed on Evan. She walked toward him, heels clicking softly, and stopped just close enough that he looked up. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, as if she feared hearing her own words. "I don't have a husband. Can I have a date with you tonight?" Evan froze. His mop hung suspended in midair, dripping onto marble. A flash of light cut through the moment, sharp, sudden, unmistakable. Someone had taken a photo, and from that second, everything began. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, the image had spread through every department like wildfire through dry brush. The photo showed Olivia Hart, CEO of a $700 million conglomerate, leaning toward a maintenance worker in the middle of the company lobby. The angle made it look intimate. The lighting made it look intentional. The caption that accompanied it through internal email chains and group texts made it look scandalous. Evan kept his head down through the rest of his shift, but the whispers followed him from floor to floor. In the third-floor break room, 2 women from accounting stopped talking when he entered. On the 5th floor, a junior analyst smirked and said, "Guess we know who's getting a raise." Evan said nothing. He emptied trash bins, refilled paper towel dispensers, and moved through the building like a ghost who'd learned long ago that silence was safer than defense. His daughter's face flickered through his mind. Emma, 7 years old, gap-toothed and trusting, waiting for him at her after-school program. He thought about the careful life he'd built since his wife died 3 years ago. A life that required invisibility. A life that couldn't afford complications. At 5:30, Olivia found him in the maintenance supply closet on the basement level. She stood in the doorway, still in her charcoal blazer and cream blouse. But her shoulders sagged in a way they never did during board meetings. The fluorescent light above them flickered once, then steadied. "I didn't think anyone would take a picture," she said. Her voice carried an edge of something he couldn't quite name. Regret, maybe, or embarrassment. But what I said was real. Evan kept his back to her, organizing bottles of cleaning solution on a metal shelf. "You don't need to pretend to be kind to me." "I'm not pretending." He turned then, meeting her eyes for the first time since the lobby. She didn't look away. Most people did. Most people couldn't hold his gaze for more than a few seconds before their eyes slid to his uniform, his mop bucket, the invisible barrier between their worlds. "Why me?" he asked. Olivia's jaw tightened. "Because you're the first person in this building who's looked at me like I'm just a person. Not a title. Not a check to cash. Just someone." Evan studied her face, the slight crease between her eyebrows, the way her fingers twisted the edge of her blazer. He'd spent 3 years learning to read people, to sense when they were lying or simply being polite. He saw neither in her expression. "If that's true," he said quietly, "then you've spent too long around the wrong people." She almost smiled. Almost. Probably. The moment stretched between them, filled with the hum of the building's ventilation system and the distant clang of pipes. Olivia looked down at her hands. "I understand if you say no. I know this could make your life harder. But I meant what I said. If you'd consider it, I'd like to take you to dinner. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can just talk." Evan's first instinct was to refuse. His second instinct was to ask why someone like her would risk her reputation on someone like him. But a third instinct, one he'd buried under 3 years of grief and exhaustion, whispered that maybe, just once, he deserved to say yes to something that wasn't about survival. "If we do this," he said, "we do it my way." Olivia straightened. "What does that mean?" 3 rules. No reporters. No talk about titles or positions. And if I feel like you're performing like you're playing a role, I leave. No explanation. No second chance. She held his gaze. "Fair." Evan nodded slowly. Then we can talk about it. Olivia turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. Thank you, she said, for not assuming the worst about me. After she left, Evan stood alone in the supply closet, surrounded by industrial cleaner and mop heads, trying to understand what had just happened. His eyes drifted to a shelf near the back wall where a small box sat wrapped in silver paper. A tag read, Maintenance Staff. From OH, he'd seen these boxes every Christmas for the past 3 years. Always signed with those initials. Always containing something thoughtful: gift cards to grocery stores, warm gloves, insulated thermoses. He picked up the box, turning it over in his hands. The tape had yellowed slightly. It had been sitting there since last December. Olivia Hart had been sending gifts to the maintenance staff for years, gifts that no one else in the building ever thought to give. Gifts that required her to notice people that most executives never saw. Maybe she wasn't pretending. Maybe she'd been seeing him all along. The next morning, Evan sent a text to the number Olivia had slipped him on a business card before leaving the closet. 3 words. You picked the place. Her reply came 30 seconds later. Let me think about it. 2 hours later, another text. How about the company cafeteria? Tonight. 9 o'clock. After everyone's gone, Evan stared at the message. The cafeteria. Not a restaurant. Not a hotel bar. Not somewhere that required him to pretend he belonged in her world. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere that belonged to both of them equally, at least after hours. He texted back, see you there. The cafeteria at 9 o'clock felt like a different planet. The overhead lights had been dimmed to energy-saving mode, casting long shadows across empty tables. The smell of industrial coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the faint scent of bleach from Evan's earlier cleaning shift. He arrived first, still in his work uniform, carrying a paper bag with 2 sandwiches he'd picked up from a deli 3 blocks away. Olivia arrived 10 minutes later. She'd changed out of her business attire into a simple white button-down shirt and dark jeans. No jewelry except small silver earrings. No makeup beyond what might have been left from earlier in the day. No security detail following 3 paces behind. She looked like someone who'd just come from a casual dinner with friends. Not the CEO of a company that employed 4,000 people. She saw the sandwiches and smiled a real smile, not the practiced one he'd seen in company newsletters. You brought food. Figured the vending machines might not cut it, Evan said. They sat across from each other at a table, near the window overlooking the parking lot. Sodium lights painted the asphalt in pools of orange and shadow. A few scattered cars remained security guards doing their rounds, cleaning crews wrapping up their shifts. Olivia unwrapped her sandwich slowly, as if buying time to figure out what to say. Evan watched her, trying to reconcile this woman with the one he'd seen commanding boardrooms. The one whose signature appeared on policy memos and quarterly reports. Okay, she said finally. Let's try something. 60 seconds. We each say something true. Something we don't usually tell people. No judgment. No follow-up. Unless we want to give it. Evan raised an eyebrow. Is this a boardroom tactic? It's a desperation tactic, Olivia said. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to sit across from someone and not be the CEO. But I want to try. The honesty in her voice cut through his skepticism. He nodded. You go first. Olivia took a breath. I'm terrified that everyone only sees my title. That if I lost this job tomorrow, no one would remember my name. They'd just remember the position. I'm scared I've built a life where I'm completely replaceable. The words hung in the air between them. Evan could hear the hum of the refrigerators behind the serving line, the distant whoosh of the HVAC system cycling through its evening routine. He thought about his own invisibility, the way people look through him every day. But her fear was different, not about being unseen, but about being seen as nothing more than a function. My turn, he said. I'm scared people only see my uniform. That they think I'm stupid because I mop floors. That they assume I'm here because I couldn't do anything else. I'm terrified that my daughter will grow up ashamed of what I do for a living. Olivia set down her sandwich. Her eyes hadn't left his face. Do you think she will be? I don't know. Right now, she thinks I'm a hero because I can fix the water fountain at her school. But she's 7. In a few years, she'll understand how the world works. She'll see what I see. And what do you see? Evan leaned back in his chair. I see a system that decided my value based on my job title before it ever met me. I see people who step over me in hallways. I see executives who drop trash 3 feet from garbage cans because they know someone like me will pick it up. I see a world where my daughter's medical bills cost more than I make in 6 months, and nobody thinks that's strange. The air between them shifted. Olivia's expression had gone still, her eyes fixed on his with an intensity that felt almost uncomfortable. What happened with your daughter? Asthma, Evan said. Bad asthma. 3 years ago, she had an attack that put her in the ER. The inhaler prescription cost $200. I didn't have $200. I was standing at the pharmacy counter trying to figure out if I could split it across 3 credit cards when someone behind me paid for it. Just walked up, handed the pharmacist cash, and left before I could say thank you. Olivia's hand had gone still on the table. Did you ever find out who it was? No. I tried. I asked the pharmacist, but they said it was a woman who didn't leave a name. I looked for her for weeks. I wanted to pay her back. I wanted to tell her what it meant that she'd saved my daughter's life that night. Silence filled the cafeteria. The refrigerators hummed. Outside, a security guard walked past the window, flashlight beam sweeping across parked cars. Olivia's face had gone pale. Emma, she said softly. Your daughter's name is Emma. Evan's breath caught. How do you know that? But Olivia just shook her head, her eyes bright with something that looked like tears. Not yet, she whispered. Ask me again later. They sat in that charged silence for a long moment before Olivia cleared her throat and steered the conversation toward safer ground. They talked about small things, favorite movies, books they'd read, places they'd never been but wanted to see. Evan learned that Olivia had grown up in Portland, that her father had built Heart Dynamics from a 3-person consulting firm into the empire it was now, that she'd taken over the CEO role at 29 when he died suddenly of a heart attack. People said I was too young, she said. They were probably right. But I couldn't let it fail. It was the only thing he left me that mattered. Did he leave you anything else? Evan asked. Olivia's smile turned sad. A lot of money. A lot of expectations. Not much in the way of instructions on how to be happy. By the time they finished eating, it was nearly 11. Evan gathered up the sandwich wrappers and empty cups, moving to throw them away. But Olivia stopped him. I've got it, she said. You don't have to, I know. But I want to. She took the trash to the bin, and Evan watched her walk across the cafeteria, a woman worth hundreds of millions of dollars, carrying garbage in a dimly lit company cafeteria because she wanted to meet him halfway. Before she left, he pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and set it on the table between them. I wrote this during my break. I was going to throw it away, but I think you should have it. Olivia unfolded the paper. In neat handwriting, it read, You've confused me, but honestly. She looked up, and for the first time all night, she smiled without reservation. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in years. 2 days later, Evan was in the basement hallway replacing the wheels on an industrial floor buffer when he heard footsteps behind him. He looked up to find Olivia standing there, still dressed for the office, but with her blazer slung over one arm and her hair slightly disheveled. The buffer upstairs is broken, she said, making a terrible grinding noise. Thought you'd want to know. Evan stood, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. I can take a look. I'll walk with you. They took the elevator in silence, the mechanical hum filling the space between them. Evan was acutely aware of the difference in their clothing, his grease-stained uniform versus her tailored slacks and silk blouse, but Olivia seemed unbothered. She leaned against the elevator wall, watching the floor numbers tick upward. I've been thinking about our conversation, she said. About being seen. Yeah? I realized something. I spend every day trying to prove I deserve this job. Trying to show I'm as smart as my father, as capable as the men who think they should be sitting in my chair. I've built an entire identity around being unshakable. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to just be a person who makes mistakes and admits when she's scared. The elevator dinged. 7th floor. They stepped out into a corridor lined with conference rooms. The floor buffer sat near the far end, plugged in but silent. Evan knelt beside it, checking the wheels and motor housing. "You're allowed to be both," he said without looking up. "The CEO who knows what she's doing, and the person who's figuring it out." "Are you?" Olivia asked. "Allowed to be both?" Evan glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "The janitor who cleans floors and the man who clearly knows how to fix anything mechanical. The single father who's doing everything right and the person who's exhausted and barely holding on. You're allowed to be both too." Evan's hands stilled on the buffer. Nobody had said something like that to him since his wife died. Nobody had given him permission to be tired and competent at the same time. He found the problem a worn belt inside the motor housing. Simple fix. He reached into his tool bag for a replacement. Installed it in under 3 minutes. Then plugged the machine back in. It hummed to life, smooth and steady. Sometimes, he said, you just have to slow down for a minute. Give the machine time to reset. Then it works again. Olivia knelt beside him, her expensive slacks touching the industrial carpet. She watched him work with the kind of attention people usually reserved for things they thought mattered. Board presentations, contract negotiations, quarterly earnings calls. But she was watching him change a belt on a floor buffer with that same focus. "I've been running too fast," she said quietly. "Yeah," Evan said. "Me too." The buffer's headlight cast both their shadows across the hallway, his in work boots and cotton twill, hers in leather heels and pressed fabric. Different worlds, same exhaustion. They sat there for a moment, neither of them moving, just breathing in the quiet hum of a machine that worked again. The next morning, everything changed. Craig Whitmore, Heart Dynamics' largest external investor, arrived for the quarterly board meeting with a tablet already cued to a video. The clip showed Olivia and Evan sitting together in the cafeteria, shot through the window by someone in the parking lot. The angle made it look clandestine. The late hour made it look inappropriate. The caption read, "CEO, caught on secret date with maintenance staff." The meeting had barely started when Craig played the video on the conference room's main screen. 20 board members watched in silence as the 12-second clip looped 3 times. "This," Craig said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger, "is the kind of behavior that destroys shareholder confidence. It raises questions about judgment, about priorities, about whether our CEO is focused on running this company or on..." He gestured at the screen. "Whatever this is," Olivia sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. She'd learned years ago not to react in the first 3 seconds. Count to 3. Breathe. Respond. Don't react. But before she could speak, the conference room door opened. Evan walked in, still in his janitor's uniform, holding a clipboard. Every head in the room turned toward him. Craig's face flushed red. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Evan said calmly. "But I was told this meeting was about maintaining company standards." "This is a closed board meeting," Craig snapped. "You need to leave." "I will. But first I'd like to say something." Olivia's eyes met his across the conference table. He saw the question there, "What are you doing?" but he also saw trust. She didn't tell him to leave. Evan stepped forward, addressing the room. "I'm the person in that video. And I'd like to clarify something. That wasn't a secret date. It was 2 people having an honest conversation in the only neutral space available to both of us. If that's considered a violation of standards, then maybe the problem isn't with the conversation. Maybe the problem is with standards that assume honesty between different levels of staff is automatically inappropriate." The room stayed silent. Craig's jaw worked soundlessly. A woman in a navy suit near the middle of the table, someone Evan recognized as the CFO, tilted her head thoughtfully. "Furthermore," Evan continued, "I've worked in this building for 3 years. In that time, I've seen executives throw trash on floors I just cleaned. I've seen people treat maintenance staff like we're invisible. I've seen a culture that measures worth by salary and title instead of contribution and character. So if you're concerned about maintaining standards, I'd suggest you start by examining which standards you're actually upholding." He set his clipboard on the table. "That's all. I'll leave you to your meeting." Evan walked out, closing the door behind him. In the hallway, his hands shook slightly. He'd just lectured a boardroom full of millionaires and possibly destroyed any chance Olivia had of weathering this scandal. But he'd also told the truth, and after 3 years of swallowing his dignity in silence, that felt like breathing pure oxygen. Inside the conference room, Olivia stood slowly. She looked at Craig, then at the other board members. Does anyone else have questions about my personal life? Or can we move on to the actual business of running this company? Craig slammed his tablet on the table. This isn't over. No, Olivia said quietly. I don't think it is. But later that afternoon, after the board meeting had dissolved into uncomfortable silence, and Craig had stormed out threatening to pull his investment, Olivia found Evan in the fourth-floor supply closet. You just defended me in front of the board, she said. I defended honesty in front of people who'd forgotten what it looked like. Olivia leaned against the doorframe. You also probably cost me my biggest investor. Did I? She smiled, tired, but genuine. No. Actually, you gave the other board members permission to say what they'd been thinking for years. Craig's been a bully for a long time. Nobody wanted to be the first to stand up to him. You just made it easier. Evan organized bottles of glass cleaner on a shelf, giving his hands something to do. I shouldn't have interrupted your meeting. Yes, you should have. You saved me from my first punch. That's worth something. They stood in the small closet surrounded by mops and industrial supplies, and Evan felt the weight of the morning settle between them. Not heavy. Just present. Real. Thank you, Olivia said softly, for not letting me face that alone. 3 weeks later, Evan noticed something strange in the building's energy bills. He'd been tracking them casually for months. Part of his job involved turning off lights in empty conference rooms and adjusting thermostats in unoccupied offices, but the numbers didn't make sense. Hart Dynamics was spending nearly 30% more on utilities than a building of its size should require. He started paying closer attention. He noticed that cleaning crews worked scattered shifts throughout the day, which meant lights and HVAC systems stayed on in different zones at different times. He noticed that the building's massive floor buffers ran on overlapping schedules, drawing peak power during the most expensive rate hours. He noticed that conference rooms were heated and cooled to full occupancy standards, even when they sat empty for days at a time. Evan pulled out a notebook and started sketching a different system, a rotation schedule that consolidated cleaning shifts to specific zones, allowing entire floors to go dark during off hours. A maintenance calendar that ran heavy equipment during low-rate periods. A smart thermostat protocol that adjusted temperatures based on actual room usage rather than assumed occupancy. He called it the clean cycle system. And according to his rough calculations, it could cut energy costs by at least 25%. The question was what to do with it. He was a janitor. Nobody asked janitors for efficiency proposals. Nobody expected maintenance staff to redesign operational systems. If he brought this to his supervisor, it would get lost in bureaucratic channels and forgotten within a week. So he did something he'd never done before. He texted Olivia, I found something. Can we talk? She replied within minutes. My office. 6 o'clock. Evan had never been to the executive level before. The elevator required a keycard he didn't have, so Olivia met him on the 10th floor and rode up with him to 12. The executive suite looked like a different building, entirely floor-to-ceiling windows, leather furniture, abstract art on walls painted in soothing grays and whites. Olivia's office was corner-facing, with views of Seattle's skyline stretching toward Elliott Bay. Evan stood in the doorway, suddenly aware of his uniform, his work boots leaving faint marks on pristine carpet. Come in, Olivia said. Close the door. He stepped inside. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. But Evan shook his head. I'd rather stand. This won't take long. Okay. He pulled out his notebook, flipped to the pages covered in diagrams and calculations, and set it on her desk. Your energy bills are too high. I know why. And I know how to fix it. Olivia picked up the notebook, studying his sketches. Her eyes moved across the pages with the same focused attention she'd given the floor buffer. After several minutes, she looked up. This is extraordinary. It's just scheduling. No. It's systems thinking. It's seeing patterns that people who've been staring at spreadsheets for years have missed. This is. She set the notebook down carefully. Evan, if this works, it could save the company hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. I think it will work. But I need your permission to try. Olivia sat down in her desk chair, still holding his notebook. Why did you bring this to me instead of going through proper channels? Because proper channels would bury it. Because I don't have a degree in facilities management or an MBA. Because I'm a janitor. And janitors don't get to redesign company systems. Except I just did. She smiled. Yeah, you just did. They spent the next 2 hours going through his proposal, page by page. Olivia asked sharp questions about implementation timelines, about union regulations, about potential pushback from staff who liked their current schedules. Evan had thought through most of it. The parts he hadn't, they figured out together. By 8 o'clock, they were sitting on the floor of her office, surrounded by printouts of energy bills and maintenance schedules, drawing new rotation maps on legal pads. Olivia's blazer lay draped over her chair. Her hair had come loose from its clip. She looked more relaxed than Evan had ever seen her. When was the last time you did this? He asked. Did what? Got excited about solving a problem. Olivia paused, pen hovering over paper. I don't know. Years, maybe. Most of my job is managing politics and appeasing investors. I forgot what it feels like to just build something. That's the best part, Evan said. Taking something broken and making it work. She looked at him, then really looked at him, not as a CEO evaluating an employee, but as one person recognizing another. Is that what you're doing with me? The question hung between them. Evan set down his pen. I don't think you're broken, he said carefully. I think you're exhausted. I think you've been running a company and forgetting to run your own life. But broken? No, you're just out of balance. And you're trying to fix that? I'm trying to be honest with someone who's been honest with me. The rest is just time. Olivia smiled, small and real. When we respect each other's time, everything gets cleaner. Yeah, Evan said. The people in the company, they implemented Clean Cycle as a pilot program 2 days later. Evan worked with the facilities director to reorganize cleaning schedules across 3 floors. They consolidated maintenance shifts, adjusted equipment usage, and installed motion-activated controls in conference rooms. The union representative pushed back initially, worried about job cuts. But Evan walked him through the plan line by line, showing how it actually created more consistent schedules and better working conditions for staff. The first week's energy bill came back 12% lower. The second week, 18%. By the end of the third week, Hart Dynamics had reduced its utility costs by 27%. The media that had spent weeks mocking Olivia's inappropriate relationship with staff suddenly had a different story to cover. The business journals picked it up, first articles with headlines like, Janitor's innovation saves tech firm 6 figures. Then the local news ran a segment about the unexpected source of Hart Dynamics' new efficiency program. Within days, the narrative had shifted entirely. Craig Whitmore's criticism looked petty in comparison. Other board members started asking questions about what else the company might be missing by ignoring input from non-executive staff. The CFO quietly suggested implementing a formal program for operational suggestions from all employee levels. And through it all, Olivia made one decision that mattered more than any headline. She insisted that Evan present the Clean Cycle results himself at the next board meeting. Evan stood at the front of the conference room, the same room where he'd interrupted 3 weeks earlier, and walked 20 board members through his system. He used his original sketches, explained his reasoning, and answered questions with the calm confidence of someone who knew his work inside and out. When he finished, Olivia spoke from her seat at the table's head. This is the person who made me reconsider how I run this company. Not because he told me I was doing it wrong, but because he showed me what I wasn't seeing. Sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from the person who's been overlooked the longest. The board approved a company-wide rollout of Clean Cycle. Craig Whitmore was notably absent from the vote. After the meeting, as board members filed out, Olivia caught Evan in the hallway. You just saved this company a fortune. You realize that changes things. Changes what? Your job, your position. People are going to want to promote you, give you a title, move you into facilities management. Evan shook his head. I don't want a promotion. I want to keep doing what I'm good at. I just want people to stop assuming I'm stupid because I mop floors. They won't assume that anymore. No. Evan said quietly. But I need you to promise me something. Don't let this become about us. Don't let people say I did this because we're... He gestured vaguely between them. Whatever we are. I did this because it needed doing. Not because I'm trying to impress you. Olivia held his gaze. I know that. But for the record, I'm impressed anyway. The newspapers changed their headlines. Janitor saves heart dynamics with 27% efficiency solution. Craig's criticisms disappeared from comment sections, replaced by praise for Olivia's leadership in recognizing talent, regardless of title. But Evan and Olivia both knew the real story wasn't about percentages or headlines. It was about what happened after everyone stopped watching. The rain came down hard the night Olivia found Evan in the lobby. It was late past 10, and he was finishing his shift, running a final mop across the marble near the entrance. Water streaked the glass doors behind him, distorting the streetlights outside into blurred halos of yellow and white. Olivia walked out of the elevator still in her work clothes, carrying her briefcase and looking more exhausted than he'd ever seen her. She stopped when she saw him. "Long day?" Evan asked. "Long year." She set down her briefcase and leaned against the security desk. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." She took a breath. 3 years ago, I was at a pharmacy at 11 o'clock at night. I'd just come from the hospital. My father had been admitted that morning with chest pains. The doctor said it was stress, that he needed to slow down. But I knew he wouldn't. I was standing in line, numb, not really present, when I heard a man's voice at the counter ahead of me. Evan's hands stilled on the mop handle. He was trying to pay for an inhaler, Olivia continued. For his daughter, the pharmacist quoted him $200, and I watched him pull out his wallet and start counting credit cards. He had 3. He was trying to figure out if he could split the charge across all of them. And the look on his face. She paused, her voice catching. It was the same look my father had in that hospital room. Desperation, fear, the terrible knowledge that money was the only thing standing between him and his child's safety. Evan couldn't breathe. "I stepped forward and paid," Olivia said softly. "I didn't think about it. I just did it. And when the man turned to thank me, I saw his eyes. I saw someone who'd been fighting for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to catch a break. I saw someone who would have done anything, given anything to save his daughter. And I thought, this is what matters. Not quarterly reports. Not board meetings. This. Right here. One person helping another when it costs them nothing. And means everything." Tears were running down Evan's face now, silent and unchecked. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I didn't want you to feel obligated. I didn't want you to say yes to dinner because you thought you owed me something. I wanted you to say yes because you wanted to." "That was you," Evan whispered. "You saved Emma's life that night." "No. You saved her life. I just paid for the medication. You're the one who's been showing up every day since then, working 2 jobs, keeping her healthy, raising her alone. You're the hero in that story. I was just passing through." Evan set down his mop. He crossed the lobby and stood in front of Olivia, this woman who'd hidden her kindness behind a corporate title, who'd been helping people for years without ever asking for credit. "The lunch that day," he said. "When you asked me out. That wasn't random, was it?" "No. I recognized you. I'd been watching you for 3 years, wondering if you remembered me, wondering if I should say something. And then one day, I just couldn't stay silent anymore. I wanted to know if the man I'd met in that pharmacy was the same person I saw in this building every day. I wanted to know if I'd imagined the kindness in your eyes. And?" Olivia smiled through tears. "You're exactly who I thought you were." They stood in the empty lobby, rain hammering against glass, the city beyond blurred and distant. Evan reached out and took her hand the first time he touched her, beyond a handshake, beyond the careful boundaries they'd maintained for weeks. "Thank you," he said. "For Emma, for everything." "Thank you," Olivia replied, "for reminding me why any of this matters." They didn't kiss. They didn't make promises or declarations. They just stood together in the quiet space between their worlds, holding on to something fragile and real. 1 month later, the main lobby of Heart Dynamics gleamed under afternoon light. Evan had just finished his shift, leaving the marble floors spotless and the windows streak-free. The building hummed with its usual rhythm, employees heading home, elevators chiming, the soft rustle of endings and beginnings. Olivia emerged from the executive elevator carrying a small folding table and 2 chairs. She set them up in the center of the lobby, right where everything had started, and began arranging 2 simple place settings: paper plates, plastic utensils, napkins folded into neat triangles. Evan watched from near the supply closet, still in his uniform, a smile tugging at his lips. "What are you doing?" "Setting a table. I can see that." "Why?" Olivia looked up, her expression open and unguarded. "Because we started something here. Because this lobby has seen every version of us, the awkward beginning, the photographed moment, the clean cycle diagrams we sketched on legal pads at 2 in the morning. It feels right to come back here. To do this properly." Evan walked toward her slowly, taking in the scene she'd created. No photographers lurked in corners. No board members watched from above. No social media posts would capture this moment. It was just the two of them in a space that belonged equally to both of them. "No reporters," he said. "No reporters. No talk about titles. Just Olivia and Evan." He stopped across the table from her. Just a janitor, and the woman who stopped to see him. Olivia had ordered dinner from a small Italian restaurant 2 blocks away. Nothing fancy, just good pasta and fresh bread. They ate slowly, talking about Emma's upcoming school play, about the company's new initiative to source employee suggestions from all departments, about the novel Evan had been reading during his lunch breaks. The lobby gradually emptied as evening settled over Seattle. The skylight above them shifted from blue to purple to deep indigo. Streetlights flickered on outside, their glow reflecting off polished marble floors. "I've been thinking about something," Olivia said, setting down her fork. "About what you said that first night in the cafeteria. About being scared Emma would grow up ashamed of what you do. I remember. I don't think she will be. I think she'll grow up knowing her father is someone who sees problems and fixes them. Someone who treats people with dignity regardless of their title. Someone who taught a CEO that the most valuable lessons sometimes come from the people who've been invisible the longest." Olivia paused. "That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to build a life around." Evan felt emotion tighten his throat. "You've changed my life," he said quietly. "You know that?" "No. You changed your own life. I just gave you a reason to show people what you're capable of." "That's the same thing." Olivia smiled. "Maybe it is." They finished eating as the lobby lights dimmed to their evening setting, casting long shadows across the space. Evan helped Olivia clear the table, folding chairs and stacking paper plates with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been cleaning up after people his entire life. But this time felt different. This time, he was cleaning up after himself. After both of them. After a moment that belonged to them equally. Before they left, Olivia turned back to look at the empty lobby, the space where she'd taken a chance on honesty, where Evan had risked vulnerability, where two people from different worlds had found common ground in the simple act of seeing each other clearly. "No rings," she said softly. "No contracts. No promises we're not ready to make yet. Just this," Evan agreed. "Right here. Right now." Two people sharing dinner in a space they both helped make clean. He took her hand. Two people who decided to stop being invisible to each other. They walked toward the exit together, past the spot where the photograph had been taken, past the elevator where everything began, past the marble floors that Evan had mopped 1,000 times without ever imagining they'd lead him here. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets gleamed wet under sodium lights. Seattle stretched out before them, full of possibility and unknowns, and the quiet promise that sometimes the most extraordinary things begin with the simplest acts of courage. Olivia squeezed his hand once before letting go. "Same time next week?" Evan smiled. "I'll bring the sandwiches. I'll bring the honesty. That's all we've ever needed." They parted ways in the parking lot, Olivia toward her sedan, Evan toward the bus stop 3 blocks away where he'd catch the 45 back to Emma's after-school program. But this time, the distance between them felt smaller. This time, they both knew that different worlds didn't mean separate lives. This time, they'd built something that couldn't be photographed, or reduced to a headline, or explained in quarterly reports. They'd built something that existed in the space between power and humility, between expectation and reality, between the woman who owned the building and the man who kept it clean. They'd built something honest. And in a world that rarely rewarded honesty, that felt like the rarest gift of all, the lobby of Heart Dynamics would see many more lunches after that. Many more quiet conversations between a CEO and a janitor who'd forgotten how to be just two people learning to trust each other. But that first dinner, the one with paper plates and plastic forks and no cameras to document it, remained theirs alone. A moment of grace in a marble lobby. A beginning built on everything that mattered and nothing that didn't. Two people choosing to see each other clearly in a world that had spent years teaching them to look away. And in the end, that was enough.